Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Balie and to this program, Ukraine, an art scene under fire. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is partly motivated by Russia's denial that Ukrainian culture has a right to exist. And tonight we talk about how Ukrainian artists and curators keep their practice alive while they're being under fire. My name is Iante Mosselman. I'm a program editor here at the Balie. And today, together with our guests from Ukraine, we will be talking about the Ukrainian art in the time of a full-scale war. With the artistic leaders of 5 Ukrainian art centers and residencies, we explore the value of art during war. And we discuss how art brings a sense of community and solidarity, especially in times of crisis. And the curators will explain how their daily practice has changed in the last few years, how the art that they curate reflects the war, and how they work on producing new cultural heritage, while that heritage is under attack. And personally, I also want to say that I read a lot about their work, and it's incredible. I think what they do is so brave and so important, so I'm really grateful that they were willing to join in conversation tonight. The speakers of this program are in the Netherlands at the invitation of DutchCulture, and DutchCulture organizes international visitor programs for cultural organizations and professionals. And since the full-scale invasion in Ukraine, DutchCulture has invited 4 groups of Ukrainian professionals to the Netherlands. And this current visit is focused on artist-in-residencies, art against all odds, Ukrainian Artist Residencies. And I'm briefly going to walk over to Lotte Geven, sorry, I was just a Dutch artist and advisor arts residencies at DutchCulture. So, because Lotte? Almost, yes, there I am. Hi. You were in Ukraine. Can you tell me a bit about what you saw and what you noticed?
Yeah, I noticed these fantastic women here next to me. First of all, I had the honor to visit them with the train, and on the contrary of our country, the train is always in time, even in times of war. And I think that already says a lot about this country. And I traveled throughout the whole country, or the whole, lots of the countries, and I met these wonderful people who were willing to keep their door open for the young artists, and also artists of all age, who stayed behind and felt the need to make art. And I think the values they protect by doing so, they are incredibly important, and it takes a really tough cookie to do so, I could say in my own words. And what I've noticed is, you spoke also about heritage, creating new heritage. I've been driving in cars and seeing like how the cultural annexation that Russian aims at takes place. I mean, they bomb musea, and then at the same time you have this artist in residence that's used these places to create a new heritage. So. By opening the doors to them, they do something that is really important, I think, for the identity of a nation. It's also creating a memory, a really intricate memory of the future, super detailed for all the makers, and by all the makers, the poets, the writers, sculptors, and so on. And they are kind of the guardians for these people who do so, and their institutions function like that. So I think we should be like super proud that people like this exist. And I think a war is not only won by a tank, but it's won by people like this. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lotte. I'm going to introduce our first speaker of tonight, Natalia Ivanova. And you could read all about her work already today in NRC, so if you haven't yet, I very much recommend that. She's the director of Yermilov Centre, contemporary art center in Kharkiv, and the biggest exhibition space in the city, which since the beginning of the Russian full-scale invasion works as an art center as well as a shelter for many artists. Natalia is also a lecturer in art management at the Department of Cultural Studies at Karazin University. And in 2021, she established Artist-in Residency for promoting communication among artists, curators, and art researchers while encouraging cultural decentralization. So please give her a very warm welcome.
Thank you.
Wait, I'm forgetting to say one thing, and that is that behind me is text, but hi, welcome. I'm going to say this when everybody is sitting, because then everybody will know. So behind me you can see a text, but over there are all the pictures of her work that she brought, and over there as well.
Добре. Дорогі друзі, дуже офіційно для мене, але так. І я хочу сказати, що, напевне, в світі існує дуже багато тем і питань, про які б ми могли з вами поговорити. І залюбки, я думаю, колись це зробимо. І я, звісно, хотіла б говорити не про війну, не про мистецтво під час війни, і навіщо воно потрібне, і яке воно це мистецтво, яке створюється в часи війни, як має працювати сьогодні українська арт-інституція, чим ми можемо допомагати художникам, дослідникам, кураторам, своїм партнерам в культурному секторі. Але в моє життя прийшла війна. І є така досить стандартна фраза «до і після», але це дійсно так. Війна розрізає твоє життя на «до» і «після», і тому ми будемо говорити про війну. Бо сьогодні про що б ми не говорили, ми говоримо і про культуру, і про мистецтво, і про події, але все одно ми говоримо про війну. Бо вона впливає на все моє життя, і на твоє, і на моє, на все наше життя. І будемо говорити про те, якого все ж таки нам вдалося набути досвіду, які виклики нам вдалося подолати. І, звісно, буду говорити про те, як взагалі будувати плани на майбутнє. Ми досить часто тут чули це питання, як ви плануєте свою діяльність, які ви будуєте плани, і як будувати ці плани на майбутнє, власне, коли цього завтра може взагалі не бути. Я з Харкова, ракета до нас долітає за 40 секунд, і нашому ППО потрібно 2 хвилини для того, щоб її перехопити, тож ситуація ось така. І з цим ми живемо кожен день, і не просто живемо, а, власне, працюємо, і оцим досвідом, як ми працюємо, що ми робимо, я би хотіла про це вам розказати. 24 лютого 2022 року я засинала вже не вдома, я засинала на такому імпровізованому ліжку в Yermilov Центрі, і поруч зі мною на таких самих імпровізованих ліжках засинали харківські митці, менеджерки Yermilov Центру, сім'ї митців, їх діти, родини, батьки. І я думаю, що сьогодні я можу провести повноцінний такий з усіма розкладами воркшоп, як за декілька годин Центр сучасного мистецтва, в якому напередодні 22 лютого відкрили виставку, як він за декілька годин перетворюється на бомбосховище і прихисток для митців, і не тільки для митців, для взагалі того ком'юніті, яке є в Yermilov Центрі, і було в Yermilov Центрі. Ну, ось так. Да, я хочу показати вам декілька фотографій, як це було. Ось це фотографії 24 лютого 2022 року. І це все відбувається в просторі Yermilov Центру. І ми там обладнали взагалі дуже важливо, коли ти в такі дні, в такі часи, бо з нами всіми це було перший раз, першого разу вже не буде, ми вже один раз це пережили. І мені здається, що дуже важливо, коли ти в такі дні і в такі часи залишаєшся в комфортному для тебе середовищі. Це дозволяє тобі приймати адекватні і правильні рішення, і це залишає не тільки тебе у фізичній безпеці, а ще і твою свідомість якось обезпечує, і це дозволяє допомагати один одному, спілкуватись і напрацьовувати ті правильні, адекватні рішення, які потрібно приймати в такі часи. Це дуже важливо, і я дуже рада, що ми змогли тоді допомогти багатьом художникам харківським і їх сім'ям. І ось ми обладнали там у себе і спальні місця, і зону для їжі, там, де ми готували їжу, і навіть проводили там воркшопи для... На фотографії видно, як Влад Юдін проводить воркшоп для зліплення. І ми попросили Павла Макова, це ж збирається мистецьке ком'юніті, ми попросили Павла Макова. Павло Маков мав представляти Україну на Венеційській бієнале у 22-му році. І проєкт був вже підготовлений до відправки, але 24 лютого ані Павло Маков, ані ми не були впевнені, він не був впевнений, що він взагалі туди поїде, і що буде цей проєкт у Венеції, і взагалі, що щось буде завтра. Але все одно ми попросили його, і він нам розповідав ось про цей проєкт. І нам важливо, йому було важливо про це розповідати, нам було важливо це чути, і ми всі вірили, що це взагалі відбудеться. І, на щастя, так і сталося. Потім нам дуже хотілося зберегти цю атмосферу, яка була тоді в Yermilov Центрі. І ми хотіли, і все, що ми тоді робили, знаєте, потім, коли ми це все подивилися на це, як на події, які вчора з нами сталися, ми зрозуміли, що насправді все, що ми там робили, це ж мистецьке середовище, це було насправді справжнє мистецтво. І ми зробили з цього проєкт вже в березні 22-го року, ми його розмістили онлайн, і він називається «Як ви?». Бо це проєкт про, з цього питання кожен день, починався наш кожен день, і цим питанням «Як ви?» він завершувався, тому що всі ми писали один одному і дізнавалися, чи живі наші близькі і наші рідні. І ось так взагалі-то виглядав тоді Yermilov Центр на фоні цієї виставки, яку ми напередодні відкрили і швиденько демонтували. А взагалі, я хочу сказати, що таких просторів, як Yermilov Центр в Харкові немає. Я, мабуть, думаю, що я правду скажу, якщо скажу, що і в Україні таких немає. Це конструктивістське приміщення, підвальне і напівпідвальне, і це справжнє бомбосховище. Там дійсно почуваєшся в безпеці, і там міцні бетонні стіни, це приміщення без вікон, і одночасно це приміщення, в якому можна робити будь-які мистецькі проєкти, проводити будь-які івенти. І ось, власне, це фотографії з тих проєктів, які ми робили до війни, це фотографії нашого простору. Як він взагалі виглядає, коли він працює за призначенням, а не як бомбосховище. Ось це проєкти, які ми робили до повномасштабного вторгнення. А це вже проєкт, який ми нещодавно відкрили, і нещодавно він завершився, Sense of Safety. Це проєкт про безпеку, який це перший міжнародний проєкт Yermilov Центру, який ми зробили. Там приймали участь багато художників з різних країн світу. Проєкт будував такі мости солідарності, Bridges of Solidarity між різними країнами, різними арт-інституціями. І взагалі, ось тут декілька фотографій з цих, власне, проєкту, який ось нещодавно завершився. Ну, це фото з концертів, з кінопоказів, з тих заходів, які ми взагалі зараз відбуваються постійно в Yermilov Центрі. Ну і за цей час ми зробили дуже багато мистецьких проєктів, ми показали 8 виставок. Наприклад, виставка «Особовий склад», яку ми показали в 23-му році, вона була створена в нашій мистецькій резиденції. Ось це вже фотографії з нашої мистецької резиденції, яка називається «Арт-Куземин». Вона розташована в Сумській області. І що я тут понаписувала? Я ніколи не читала свої промови. Це перший досвід, вибачте. Ця резиденція знаходиться в Сумській області на території такого в такому прекрасному природному оточенні. Це Гетьманський природний парк, це невеличке село. І там от мені у спадщину дістався цей будинок, йому вже більше 100 років, і поруч з ним я купила садибу, і там зараз розміщується мистецька резиденція. І ми її відкрили в 21-му році, і відтоді вона задумувалась як така на літо резиденція для художників, але з 22-го року вона працює нон-стоп. І там працює теж як прихисток, як місце для творчості, як місце для іноді відпочинку художників. І ось я вам можу показати. Ми працюємо там із мистецьким ком'юніті, з місцевим ком'юніті і робимо майстер-класи для сільських дітей, якісь презентації, все, що створюється на резиденції, потім має такі публічні презентації і публічні події для місцевих мешканців. Ну і ось, власне, тут декілька фотографій, як відбуваються там якісь мистецькі активності, як працюють художники. Ось майстерні, ось дитячі майстер-класи. Це фото спільного продукту міждисциплінарної резиденції, коли приймали участь і актори, і художники, і створювали таку виставу. Це в 23-му році, там відбулася, власне, прем'єра цієї вистави. І ось декілька ще фотографій з наших арт-студій, і це з публічних заходів, які відбуваються в просторі села. Це цього року Олексій Яловега працював з такою культурною спадщиною цього регіону, невеличкого, локальної спільноти нашої, і зробив такі мозаїчні скульптури, які ми встановили в просторі села. І ось такий відбувався, власне, процес їх створення. Ну, звіт завершено. Тепер трошечки про те, чи варто це все робити, чи потрібно це все робити, чи не страшно це все робити, і чи не марно ми витрачаємо на це все свої зусилля, які, напевне, ми могли б витратити, можливо, в якомусь іншому напрямку. Я думаю, що сьогодні нам всім варто пам'ятати, за що саме точиться ця війна. І це війна, ну, для мене особисто, це і для багатьох українців, це війна цінностей. І ми боремося проти тих цінностей, які не поділяємо, і які не хочемо впускати ані в своє особисте життя, ані в свою державу. І боремося за ті цінності, з якими ми хочемо рухатися у майбутнє, і на які покладаємо свою надію, віру, сподівання на те, що ми будемо жити у вільній і прекрасній країні. І нам ще потрібно над багатьма питаннями працювати. Це і питання власної ідентифікації, культурної спадщини, яку ми втрачаємо майже кожен день, над якимось масштабними світоглядними концептами. Нам потрібно лікувати людей, які зазнали травматичних досвідів. І я думаю, що мистецтво нам точно для цього ще знадобиться. І я декілька слів ще хочу сказати про втому. Коли я чую, ми чуємо зараз багато такої інформації, таких меседжів, що світ втомився, ми втомились, всі втомились. Я думаю, що сьогодні ми просто не маємо права на втому. Насправді людина, звісно, людина, і вона втомлюється і має право на відпочинок, але я думаю, що сьогодні не та ситуація, коли ми можемо сказати собі, я пацифіст і це не моя війна, і не можемо говорити про те, що я втомився, тому що є люди, які воюють і які втомилися набагато більше, ніж ми. І я думаю, що якщо ми можемо щось робити, щось створювати, можемо сприяти створенню політичного, критичного мистецтва, сучасного мистецтва, надавати допомогу художникам. В цьому ми маємо це робити. Якщо ми можемо допомагати своїм партнерам, кураторам, дослідникам, ми теж маємо це робити. І можемо організовувати дискусії, обговорювати на цих дискусіях питання досить актуальні для нас сьогодні. І дерусифікації, і деколонізації, і багатьох нагальних питань. Ми маємо це робити, тому що все, що ми зробимо сьогодні, це внесок в наше майбутнє, і саме з цим ми підемо в наше майбутнє. Все. Ой, дякую. Я ще хотіла сказати, що якщо ви не встигли подивитися всі фотографії, то у мене є невеличкі подаруночки. Це такі листівки з нашими проєктами, з роботами художників, і можна потім їх буде взяти. Дякую.
I'm Yulia. I worked as an interpreter during this trip. So basically, she said that she brought with her some informational leaflets. So later on, after this event, you can come over and pick them up. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Natalia. We just heard her thoughts and vision about the current situation, and we will continue now the conversation with two of our guests, Božena Pelenska and Irina Polikarchuk. I will ask them to join me here on stage, and I'm going to briefly introduce them. Next to me on the left is Božena Pelenska, art and cultural manager, cultural anthropologist, and program curator. She is a program and executive director of the Jam Factory Art Center in Lviv. That was, in fact, a jam factory before you created an art center shortly in it. Yeah. And since 2015, she has led a transformation, that's what I just said, yeah, of a former jam factory into a thriving art center in its nowadays. She was shaping its strategy, programming, partnerships, and operations. And she also developed a number of municipal grant programs for cultural and editorial. I'm sorry, I'm not doing this very well. Educational organizations, a bit of a stutter today. On the other side of the table is Irina Polikarchuk, a culturologist and art historian. And since 2016, she is director of Artsfeed Gallery, where she works on the public programs, establishes partnerships, coordinates the team's work, and manages projects. She's also a co-curator and coordinator of the Ukrainian part in the Secondary Archive project, founded by the Katarzyna Kozira Foundation. In her work, Irina is interested in social inclusion and accessibility, urban practices, and informal approaches to education. Thank you both very much for being here. And maybe I want to start to ask you about these values, as this is a war of values. And I was wondering to the both of you, what values are important at this moment for you in your work? Irina, do you want to start?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here, and I'm happy to join this talk this evening. Actually, talking about values, I would say that such value as freedom, access to education, possibility to develop and to research and to save cultural heritage, communication, these are like main values. Not all of them, of course, probably Božena will add, but these are the values we are working with and we are fighting with for the front line. Not we personally, but brave men and women that defend us.
Božena?
Yes, absolutely. I can. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. So, coming back to your question, absolutely, this war is about the values, and of course, to continue. Well, human rights and dignity are the values that are standing there on the edge. Everyone knows like what's happening there in our country, but as well, the freedom is it's one of the basic, of course, values that is very important, and yeah, and human dignity. And this is also something that is interwoven into the everyday life, of course. But we can observe what's happening there within this war. So these are the basic values we have to stand. Even it's hard to imagine even now in the 21st century. This is what we are standing for.
Do you think that art in a way also makes you sort of can give back a human dignity or make it that it does something on that front?
Yeah, well, speaking about art, since the start of the full-scale invasion, I believe like almost everyone or every institution started to question like the full-scale invasion started. Like it's the time to fight, to protect, to support each other, to provide humanitarian aid. Because when everything is collapsing, of course, you think first of all about saving your life and lives of your loved ones. And this is like basic principle. And of course, art and culture becomes secondary at the moment of devastation. And we had these talks many times. We as art and cultural professionals, what's our role now? And of course, first of all, first days of war, full-scale invasion, because war started in 2014. And the first days of the full-scale invasion, it was like the basic, like to save, to support, to provide space, especially like Lviv, the city I come from, was the gateway out of the country where millions of people were going through. And we've been providing our spaces became, places for people to, offices we turned to like number of sleeping places for various people. Within a few weeks after the full-scale invasion, we started to come back to discussing among ourselves, like why what we do matters. Of course, in the face of arms, art, collapse, and culture very easily is erased, and cultural heritage is destroyed. But when we started to think about our work and what it brings, and we thought like, it's very simple comparison, but a tree can grow by itself. but art and culture never can do. And this is about us. This is about what we do, who we are, and culture is actually the basic principle of like art education. Culture is the basic principle of a free and developed society. So, and we discussed that so many times, and of course we understood we have to go on despite anything.
Thank you. Irina, what was it like for you? Because you were leading the team at Artsfit Gallery. What was it like for you when the full-scale invasion began?
A couple of hours before the full-scale invasion, on February 23rd, we presented 50 first names for the secondary archive. Actually, this is the project that was founded by the Katarzyna Kozera Foundation in Warsaw, and it's aimed to highlight the experiences and practice of women artists from the Eastern and Central Europe. And actually, we were working on this project from September 2021, and the date of the presentation was February 23rd, so it was evening, just a couple of hours before the full-scale invasion. And on that day, before the presentation, we talked a lot in an office, what will we do tomorrow if the invasion will happen? But the invasion happened on the morning of the next day, and of course it was horrible. And as Bożena said, the first things that we did, that we managed how to save our lives and lives of our families, yes, so we managed to organize private processes, of course, and Dnipro, the city I came from and the institution I work in, is situated really very close to the front line, and from today's news, we found out that Russian troops came even closer, and it's 7 kilometers to the region, not to the city, but to the city it's about like 70 kilometers, but to the region it's 7 kilometers, so it's pretty close. So, of course, we wrapped up all the program that was planned for the nearest time, and we couldn't even, in media, support the project that we presented on the 23rd of February. But in 2 or 3 weeks, together with our colleagues from the Dnipro Center for Contemporary Culture and Kultura Medialna, we organized a social hub, a social hub to support people who came to Dnipro from even more dangerous regions, and we had like a program for children to create for them a safer space for those hours during the day. We made a co-working for people who needed to continue their work, access to internet, to the laptop, for example. Also, we cooperated with humanitarian organizations that provided food and clothes for people who came to Dnipro. But in June, we realized that the team is ready and actually feel the necessity to restart the cultural program, to come back to exhibitions, and we also felt the request from the audience that people need art. Of course.
How did you notice?
Actually, when people were coming to these humanitarian organizations to get help, yes, humanitarian help, they found out that there is a gallery nearby, so they were wondering what is this, what is going on. And also some people from the cultural community, artists, for example, who left in Dnipro, they were also coming all the time, and we had discussions what to do, whether it's time or not to continue our work. Because, for example, on March or even April, we didn't even know whether we will still have any possibility to work in this space. So, like, the team felt this necessity, and people who stayed in Dnipro also, like, made their requests. So we started on June to show films, and, for example, at the end of July, we opened the first exhibition during war times. And since that, we restarted the cultural program. So the request for cultural events is also is based on people's desire to to discover their identity, because this war and talking about values also caused a lot of questions around person's identity, who we are, what do we do, what do we need, what do we protect, national identity and regional identity as well. So a lot of our projects in Dnipro, for example, are dedicated also to this theme, but not only to this theme, of course.
Maybe I'll catch up here, but also people, like, it's very interesting that not only the reason why people came for cultural and artistic projects like music events, people wanted to be together, and that's like sometimes people had to go to the basement or were scattered around and they didn't see each other so often. And well, cultural activities gave people a possibility. They couldn't stop talking because at the very beginning, the curfew was quite broad. Now it's shorter, and that was also the point of connection, that was. It's still very important, like that social reason for people to come and to see.
And people reflect their experience through art, someone as an artist and someone as a viewer, yeah, or like a participant of the event. This is also an important thing.
That was interesting because, well, you did one project called the Lublin Station.
Yes.
And I read about it that it was also the means were also to create a peaceful environment for artists. And I was wondering how you do that, because it must be incredibly difficult with the war being also so close and the frontier being so
Actually,
close.
Lublin Station, this was the project in partnership with the Galeria Labyrinth in Lublin.
Mm-hmm.
They had a residency for artists. Yeah, so we worked in cooperation, so we help them to choose artists whom to invite later to Lublin. But we actually, from 2023, restarted our residency program that was founded in 2019 before the full-scale invasion. And now we are also rethinking our approaches and tools in working with residencies. And for instance, now we are mostly focused on the local creative community because we feel a really very high level of responsibility, and we can't invite people from other regions, even if they are ready to go to Dnipro and spend some time there. And we are not ready to invite people from abroad for these residencies. That's why we a bit changed our focus and work with people who stayed in Dnipro. These are locals or those ones who came from more dangerous regions. Yeah, so we have group residencies and we work with them there.
You do that as well a lot, work with local communities.
Yes, we do. It's one of our directions we work. So actually, the previous picture was made at our residency. Well, to continue, we actually have 3 directions we work. It's theater, contemporary performing arts, let's say it like that, visual art and music. And the residencies that we have are mainly connected to visual art, and they are like research-based residencies for artists, but also residencies that are connected with working with communities, which became even more important at that time. But maybe I would like to switch to what we did. We had this privilege of thinking, and we stand in one foot on our professional activities and with another foot on activism and social engagement. So we were able to think and rethink. We couldn't operate as we wanted since in 2022 and even in 2023. It's changed now. We can operate now more, but at that time we thought what we can do, like as an art organization for the community we work with, and we decided to organize program for artists that relocated to Lviv. And we had actually 2 editions of that program. And they were, we understood that artists, professional artists, they were quite lost in our city. So they were volunteering and they came and they knew our city as a place for refuge. So we thought we need to do something to change that. And we organized a program for integration of artists into the artistic community, and also a residency that was focused on integration of families that also came to our city. So artists were provided with numerous possibilities to get acquainted with curators, artists, places, with the city itself. Also, they had a place to work and stay and interact. And for them, most of them, after the program was over, they were saying that it was so important for them that they are still at home because they had to leave everything behind, and because many were questioning whether they should continue their artistic practices. Yeah. That was also a way of encouraging them, and it's important for you to practice art.
You said also that art has a therapeutical function in some way for artists maybe who were in the war as well.
I wouldn't only limit art to therapeutical functioning, right?
But maybe as well.
Yeah, of course it has and it does. It's a very interesting question for how we can treat art, right, within a big tragedy. Actually, it does a number of things with us. It can be a trigger point when we open my institution, the Yermilov Art Center. It's a former industrial space, and I've been working almost 10 years with that. We've been project-based, and we could open our space last year only, and we are in operation only 1 year. So for us, that was we opened with an exhibition about what's happening in the country, trying to reflect and wonder when actually this war started, when actually the approach and what's been happening with us, and we tried to look back 2 years and 10 years and even more. So for many people, in fact, it was very triggering, and art can trigger, and especially contemporary art, because we deal with ideas and complicated questions. We raised various questions, and some people told us that being there and had this possibility of look how artists being practicing in occupied Kherson, for example, how they had an art, there was an artist that was presented in our exhibition. She didn't have any tools and means to draw and to practice, but she couldn't cope, and she started to draw on the tiles. She was taking out tiles in her bathroom. She was hiding them, and she was drawing on the tiles. And after liberation, her son, we got these art pieces. This, of course, it's in a way therapeutical, but also it tells very complicated stories, or something that was hidden as well in Kherson, and an artist sent us a capsule where he's writing what he was just writing down, what he was going through, but it also was connected with a lot of very complicated and dangerous things. So, and it triggers a lot, but it tells a lot about what it is, and how we live through that, and share about that. But the therapy actually is also in a way not to escape, because art can be also a way of escapism, I believe, but it's also we've been talking about that. To us, it's also the way to to face the reality, very complicated one, but it's very important not to hide from that, and art actually can fix it and tell about that.
Do you think escapism is a negative thing only? Because I can also imagine in this reality, sometimes, maybe.
Yeah, of course, it is actually a way of coping in many cases. We've been talking about that. Like my colleague, she is the theater director. She is, in fact, from Kharkiv. And she said, like, for her, yeah, very often it's a safe place, what they create together, like, because they can express themselves through art, and temporarily it's like creating an utopian space safe in our underground, but it's a temporarily, like, dreaming about something. It can be, and in a way it might be therapeutical, of course.
Irina, you had a lot of different performances and exhibitions, but there was one that you have some images of as well, and it was called "The Soil Under My Nails Reminds Me of Dried Blood." And you can take yes, the exhibition. Can you tell me a bit about it?
Yes, this is one of the latest exhibition in the Art Suite Gallery, and it was curated by a young curator, Alia Segal, and actually it was shown twice in Ukraine. For the first time it was shown in the Naked Room Gallery in Kyiv in June, and then it moved to Dnipro and a bit was widened with other artworks. Actually, this exhibition came from our bigger research, the secondary archive, because as I told before the full-scale invention, we presented first 50 names, but during the full-scale invention, we talked to curators and realized that it's worth to add new names to the archive, but with a specific focus on the war. So these 15 new women artists that were added this year had a specific theme, women artists in war. And their manifestos, their texts were dedicated to their practice after the full-scale invention. How do they develop it or not? So, like, their reflections on war. And this exhibition actually came from this bigger research, because Alia Segal also is a co-curator of the secondary archive. And here she worked with the theme of women experiences during wartime, and she invited to participate 6 artists, 3 of them from the first edition of the archive and 3 of them from the second edition of the archive. And we also worked closely with other NGOs in Ukraine who research events, who gather information from people under occupation. For example, this is the NGO Northern Cultural Capital, which is in Chernihiv. This is the northern region of Ukraine that also borders with Russia. And for example, Lviv-based artist Olga Kuzura had an exhibition to the Chernihiv region. She talked to people that gather all this information. She talked to normal people who survived occupation, and she gathered their stories and created an artwork about women experiences under occupation. Another artist from this exhibition is, for example, Margarita Polovinko, who is a young artist from Kyiv, if I'm not mistaken, but now she's at the front line, and she works as a volunteer at the evacuation with the medical staff. She is a really very young woman, like under 25, if I'm not mistaken. But she's really very brave to do those kind of work, and she also works with drones. But at the same time, she's trying to save, and I don't know whether develop, but to save her artistic practice. So in the frames of this exhibition, we presented graphic works by Margarita Polovinko, which were drawn by her own blood. So this exhibition was actually a possibility to highlight women experiences, very different experiences during wartime. As a medical staff on the front line, as women that survived occupation, as a woman that is waiting for her husband or the loved ones from the front line, as a woman who lost her house, her home, like the place of her childhood, for example. These were the artworks of Daria Molokayedova. So yeah, this exhibition was about that.
Thank you both for this conversation, and you will remain seated.
Thank you.
I'm going to invite Alona Karavai and Anastasia Manuliak to join me. I'm going to introduce you as well, and I try to keep my stutter internal now. Alona Karavai, she's a cultural manager, she's sitting over here, a curator, essayist, co-founder of the project space Assortimenta Gimnata, the residency house Casa Maesternia, and co-founded an online and offline archive about art post-impresa. Alona is originally from the Donetsk region, and she worked with the contemporary art center Izoliatia. Is that okay? Yes.
You're doing great.
Thank you. Well, it was based in Donetsk. After 2014, she was living and working in Berlin. And since 2018, she's working in Ivano-Frankivsk. And since 2022, she's focused on urgent art residencies in Ukraine, the evacuation of private collections, and organizing Ukrainian contemporary art exhibitions in Europe. And since 2024, she works on a program on scattered communities, bringing together artists staying in Ukraine and living abroad as refugees. And our fourth guest, Anastasia Maniliak, head of visual arts at the Ukrainian Institute in Kiev, where she represents the visual arts sector and runs programs such as the International Exhibition Support Program Visualize. And in 2022, she co-created ArtsLink Assembly 2022, Greener Grass, cultivating trans-border connections between Ukrainian cultural communities, and this was in Warsaw. And before joining the Institute in 2019, she worked as a cultural manager and independent curator. And she is also a representative of Zabravka, an international initiative to support artistic residencies. Thank you both for joining us. Maybe just a question that's no, I'm going to ask this more openly. Is there something that you just heard in this first conversation that you would like to add something to?
I think that colleagues did very good job in expanding the questions. I would maybe, we are constantly referring to values in this conversation, and I think that we will continue doing so. I would just maybe say that I agree that this war is about the values, and this war is about identities, and it's important for us therefore to continue doing art. And you heard these brilliant examples, fantastic work that a lot of institutions in Ukraine are doing all over the country, and the demand for art and for culture within Ukraine is also increasing, which is also marking this, need for self-identification, but also for having this place, this space, not always safe space, to talk about this sometimes very difficult questions.
Thank you.
I found it very interesting when you started to talk about therapeutical function of art, and this is what Nastya is telling. Like, from one point of view, art is a place to disagree. Art is a place to stay critical. Art is a place which actually does not have to be safe. And here, in times of full-scale invasion, from one point of view, we are trying also to look a little bit more attentive into our audience and to see, not to trigger too much, but from other point of view also to protect this space, which has to be critical and which function is not to be safe. Yeah.
Do you have an example of something of a space that you could create that critical thought within?
I think it would be probably not too self-critical to say like that I created this critical space, but like there was one case I was thinking about, and this is a case from 2022. It's spring of 2022. Many people are rushing to Western Ukraine, where I'm based, and we're just happening to have more and more artists in our space. Like each morning I come to the office, to the gallery, and I just discover new people there. People, children with dogs and so on, and they are telling, okay, this is another artist, this is a friend of mine. And then Lesia Homenko, who is contemporary artist, who also came to us, I don't know, by a chance, and she's telling, okay, we have to do a residency out of it, and it will last few weeks. Mm-hmm. And on this moment, I thought, okay, it's like in 2014, when I went out of Donetsk, I also thought it like that. I had kind of deja vu back then. And then I said, okay, let's do a residency for a few weeks because like everybody is here. Then the residency lasted 3 months. And then we thought, okay, what is happening in this residency? Probably artists are just searching for a safer space. And actually, many of them were creating a lot. And this was super untypical for our residencies because we are very process-oriented in our work. And just before the full-scale invasion, during COVID, we had micro-residencies with a question how not to create like this trail, like how to make art without production and so on. And like how we are working, I actually very much used to that when the artists are going away, we do not have practical material scenes after that. And in this residency, during 3 months, we had more than 60 objects which were created. And I think it was also in a way compensation to it. You were speaking about that, speaking about new heritage. It was compensation like to the what was going on, and people tried to compensate it. And then we got invitations to bring it abroad, and we already were on the way to bring it abroad. And then I had very bad feeling that I will bring it abroad, will not show it here in Ukraine. We did not know back then whether it will come back, not come back. It's June 2022, you know, like everything is like on fire still, like even in Kyiv Oblast, like there are like Russians are coming away, but still they are still there. And then it was the 2nd June 2022. We have done this exhibition in our space. And actually it was too much for our space. Like we had to show it like in the corridors. We have to take away some of the furniture and like show it everywhere, like where we could show this art. And we were asking ourselves, like, is it okay now to show the scenes we are showing? Because it's 2nd June 2022. And we were also discussing it with artists. And then we decided, okay, we were writing down what we were discussing, and we put it also on the walls as big stickers, also as questions. And one of the stickers is still hanging there, and it's written on the stickers in the corridor. And now the main question is, for whom is this exhibition? We were asking ourselves, is it not only for cultural diplomacy? Can we show it now inside? Is it not too triggering? And then it was the 2nd of June, and many people came. Like it was like one of the fullest exhibitions, and new people came, and teenagers were coming, and older people were coming. And we were discussing here also with the colleagues that the audience, like we got more audience in all of our spaces after 2022. And I was really like watching people, how they interact with some of the works, because some of the works were really with explicit content. About some of the works, I was not sure. And then some people were telling, okay, it's nice also to come, like, also to face what is going on, what you, Božena, said, like to look into the eyes, to look the dragon into the eyes, but like when I'm together with some other people. But then a good friend of mine came to me, and she looked me in the eyes and she said, Alona, why are you doing this to us? Like, for whom is this exhibition? And I still remember this voice when this friend of mine is telling this to me, and I did not have answer to her, like, except of the answer that there is like this space of art, and this space will always be not safe space. This is how it works. Yeah.
By saying, why are you doing this to us? What do you think she exactly meant?
I believe she meant, why are you showing it too close, so close, what is going on? Mm-hmm. Why are you making me face this?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I want to talk to you about another topic as well before we go a bit more back to this, because one of the subjects that I think is not being discussed enough in the Netherlands is the topic of looking at what is happening in Ukraine as a colonial war also, and Anastasia, because there is a process, I think, going on, and I think also a lot of Ukrainian artists are working very hard to show that you could see this war, you should see this war as a colonial war. And can you tell me a bit about what that idea is, and also how this process of bringing forward this narrative is going?
Thank you for this question. It's also not a safe territory, even within Ukrainian community. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of discussions. We have this tendency to think about decoloniality with the theory that already exists, which is very well developed in South America, and well spoken. And when we think about colonizers, we tend to think about West Europe as the
Netherlands,
as a classical colonizers. And here it's never simple, but here it's more simple, than in referring to Ukraine, for example, but also many other cultures and nations that were part of colonial powers of Russian Empire and the Soviet Union afterwards. And for us, it's important to have the possibility to speak about our experience. Let's face it, we did not really have the platform to speak about Ukraine internationally, and Ukrainian culture or art are not part of global agenda. There are a lot of reasons for that, but since the full-scale invasion put a spotlight on Ukraine was on the first pages of all the media, for us it was also the possibility to finally have this platform, to finally have this possibility to speak for ourselves instead of others be speaking for us. And it's very important also for us to have the possibility to explain all the complex history of Ukraine, and also all the and also by this to explain this imperial character of the war that is happening in Ukraine since 2014, and especially after the full-scale invasion, but also that this did not happen a year ago, 3 years ago, or 10 years ago. It's a war, and it's a resistance that is happening for thousands of years. And during the Russian Empire, for example, in the 30s, there was a period that is called in the history of Ukrainian art the executed Renaissance, when the whole generation of intelligentsia, of best poets, theater directors, writers, but also artists were executed just because they were Ukrainians. And this episode, I think, explains very well why we are now at the same moment in history, when artists and people working in the sphere of culture are maybe the next ones after the military that are under the threat when Russians are occupying Ukrainian territories, for example. I'm not talking even about our friends and colleagues who are in the military right now, but I'm talking about civil people who because of their active positions, are also in a great danger, and unfortunately we can talk about many examples of this.
Yeah, you just mentioned it to me as well, because you say our friends that are in the military, but you just mentioned to me as well that you were speaking among yourself and realizing that almost all the men you know are now in the military.
A lot of artists are joining the military. All men from 18 till 60 in Ukraine can be drafted to the military. Women can go voluntarily. But now is maybe the most difficult, one of the most difficult moments in the war of Russia against Ukraine. The news from the front line are not the best. The general geopolitical situation is not also the one that makes us very happy. People are getting very tired, and and people in the military who are also, they were not, it was not their decision to go to the military. They're not professional soldiers. They were just, they had to. They're also tired. So people are lacking, and and that's why a lot of people make this decision to join the military. And a lot of my personal friends who are artists or cultural professionals, they are in the military, both male and female. So it's it's a very
Maybe I'll just join in here. We must also illustrate that why this is also genocidal war, and how art and culture is erased. We can talk about people that are not directly in the military. You might have heard about Victoria Amarina. She was a writer, and she was documenting war crimes for the court. And last year, when she was in Kramatorsk, right? A spot where she was sitting with Colombian writers, journalists, missile hit, and she was killed. And she was also trying to find a book that was written by Volodymyr Vakulenko, a children's writer. He was under occupation. He was one of the first who was executed just because he was a writer. And this is like, we've been talking that we are facing it once again, that we are living against something we haven't even thought of in our minds, and not even mentioning like physical spaces, cultural heritage that been purposely destroyed. Or that's very interesting, like, because it's very much connected with changing public space, and also like creating a safe space around, and every town or village Russian army comes, the first thing they do, they try to take away like monuments. Even like there are differences in writing, and they are trying to. There were like pictures when they just try to write a different letter where E was. So they change and immediately, changing names and putting monuments. So this is what it means. It means that culture is a soft power and very strong one, which is unfortunately used in that way, and something that they want to, like Ukrainian culture, to destroy something that opposes them. So that's the reality that we are facing these days.
Yeah, I think it's very good you mentioned it, because all genocides, of course, are also an erasure of culture. Alona, you work also very hard to preserve cultural heritage, and you launched a program for the evacuation of artworks. Can you tell me something about that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I believe like I believe like there is probably no person in Ukrainian culture right now who is not working with heritage, like no matter like what we are doing, because it's a lot of connected also with the memory and so on. And it's pretty untypical situation because like the museum workers, they're doing a great job, but they need also support in that. And it's also like this very typical Ukrainian situation when there is challenge and everybody tries to step in. And such initiatives as ours, which is actually not super big, such initiative as ours, there were a few of them in Ukraine. These are activists who helped also other people to evacuate some objects. And actually we started it also in spring 2022. We also had, I would not call it hate wave, but we also had people who did not understand it, why we're doing that in spring 2022, and not doing something differently. But then I have found the explanation for me, like everybody is like, you know, engaging for what he or she can do. And if somebody sees something more important, like it's like, welcome. This is how like the civil society is working. And it was spring 2022. We've organized a few routes, a few smaller operations to bring out some works from the areas we could come in. We were taking in the requests of people, and we're trying just to go also with the private cars to pick it up.
So tell me in detail, how does it go? You just get a phone call and someone says, or somebody is writing you, like, you know, it's Ukraine, people find you anyway. Like if you have written it once on Facebook, like people will find your telephone number, will find where you live in, like, you know, you just have to say it once where some people hear it, and then people will find you. Yeah, we put some kind of like a very short online form, and people started to write in this online form. But people also found like us on other ways, and they were just approaching us. And in the end, we landed doing that around 5 months, because after that, like this borders where we could still come through got too strong. We could not come in anymore. Like the borders which were flexible were not flexible anymore back then. And in the end, we landed in the situation where we could work only with each third request, like two were not feasible for us, and every third was more or less feasible. I still remember about a request from our partners from Platforma 2, which came on 28th of February. They said, okay, could you come in? And we tried to come in, but then in one day they called and say, please do not come in.
It was Mariupol, just to clarify.
Sorry, yes, thank you. It was Mariupol. It was like our partners from Mariupol. And then fortunately, like I got a call from them, it was the 3rd or the 4th of March, because I was still trying to contact Diana. And she said to me, she was answering always very fast, and she's answering, okay, I cannot talk right now, I will answer you in 20 minutes. And then in 20 minutes she calls and says, okay, we are out. And when you called me, we were coming out of the city. We could take some artworks with us in the car, and we were just approaching Russian tank when you were speaking with me, and I could not talk with you. And they said, oh, okay, yeah. So this is basically how it was working. And we also ended up working with some small local museum, but mostly with a so-called unofficial heritage. Because in Ukraine, you must imagine there is like not a single state museum for contemporary art, and everything what was created in the independence, like since the independence of Ukraine, this kind of unofficial heritage, it's mostly in private galleries, in family collections, like in institutions like Irina's or Božena's, and so on, due to the fact that museums did not have enough budget also to purchase the works. Like it's only some small amount of this heritage landed in museums, and this is basically the heritage which we call unofficial, and which we do not know about. And we were mostly working also with such heritage, and it's also a pretty dramatic situation because if in terms of museums collection, if we lose it, we know what we have lost, and in terms of this heritage, we do not know what we have lost, and like this is something what cannot be calculated.
But maybe we should share about one of the initiatives which was started in Ukraine by our colleagues in Kyiv, NGO Contemporary Art Museum. So they work as an NGO, and in Ukraine it's one of the super important things. We work a lot horizontally, and the power of connection are really important. And I think this was one of the fast and strong features how we respond. We do not wait for even when there were no direct position or something. We can do it by connecting with each other and others and act very quickly. So this NGO, Contemporary Art Museum, they are not physical museum. They are creating a database, and they are they've created one of the biggest databases about contemporary art in Ukraine, which is partially shared online. But they are also started working with private collectors, museums, and encouraging them to digitalize the heritage, because this awareness that actually so many things we might lose, and we have already lost due to the war, but also due to a lot of people, let's say, moved out somewhere, and they are trying to reach out to as many as possible collectors, private institutions, and digitalize that. And I think it's interesting combination of tragedy and innovation. Yeah, we can share a lot of examples of inventions of something. Yeah, you do not have something, you miss, and certain people start to come together and invent things like that. So, and I think this example of NGO Contemporary Art Museum, we really hope one day they will become a physical contemporary art museum and will share, they also purchasing artworks, but this is a growing database, and they also contact artists to do that. So this is also one of the other sides of what's happening in the country, because we started and we're sharing a lot of tragic things which are in fact in the country, but also we can share about the way we are coping, but also others, due to this this horizontal connection and super big need.
It's actually, if I would describe Ukraine next time, I would quote you, Bożena, telling interesting connection of tragedy and innovation. It's a very nice, well put together.
I was going to ask a question that goes a bit more onto that, and after that I think I'm going to go and ask and see if there's any questions from the audience, because what I'm hearing as well, that, or maybe it's a simplification, but I'm going to make it anyway. As you can see it's what you're all doing, working in the arts, but you also have these two other options. Either you could flee or you could fight. And I was wondering, what do you tell yourselves? What are the hopeful examples you sort of carry with you? What makes you decide every day to choose art?
To choose art or choose to stay?
To stay and to work in art, and to what is... Also because, Alona, you came back, of course, after you were in Berlin, after you fled. So what is it for you that keeps you going, in a sense?
Yeah, I believe it could change any day. I believe it could change any single day. Also the decision to flee could come. Also the decision to fight can come. For me, it's never-ending carousel. In which I'm going, and and on some particular moment this carousel finds its stability point here, but it does not mean that stability point will be different on another moment. And I also believe that Ukrainian community, which is now abroad, which is now here, and many faces that I also see here, is our big strength, that we are everywhere. We're even more everywhere that we used to be, and this makes us stronger.
Thank you.
I may maybe continue that, yeah, I might be the lucky one, because when the full-scale invasion started, I was working for the public institution, which does not mean that I am on public service, but still I found, like, we immediately had a lot of work to do. First, just documenting the losses of cultural heritage and translating it in English and other languages to kind of disseminate this information, which was not documented anywhere. And we were trying to create this kind of database together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to which Ukrainian Institute is affiliated to, and kind of spread this information. And yeah, and immediately I did the first project in the beginning of March 2022. Because, like, yeah, we woke up and we understood that, like, the demand to showcase Ukrainian culture is huge, and for me it was like no question that we can work with cultural diplomacy, and we need to explain, like, what's going on in Ukraine and why it's important for us to fight only through culture. That's the way how you can explain what the whole humankind will lose if they lose Ukraine, because, like, Ukraine was completely unknown. If we say that, you know, Kharkiv will be destroyed, what will you think about? And if I say that Paris will be destroyed, you will immediately think about, you know, cultural sites. So for us, it was important to explain by the means of culture immediately what the world will lose if the world will lose Kharkiv, for example. And just recently, like, the brilliant architectural example of constructivist architecture, the Держпром in Kharkiv, was damaged severely by the Russian rocket. Yeah, and it's like one of a lot of examples that that material cultural heritage as well is being destroyed. The Russian rocket hit museum of Grigory Skovoroda, and it was almost completely destroyed. A lot of culture sites, a lot of architectural sites are destroyed on purpose. And for us, it's also important to have the possibility to talk about it. So that's why, for now, at least, I see the meaning in what we are doing, and I see that the support that we receive from international partners as well is very important, you know, for us to know that we are not doing it in vain.
I would add maybe one more reason is, like, high level of responsibility for people in a team and for the institution. Because, for example, Art Street Gallery operates for 11 years already, but at that moment it was like for 9 years old, for 9 years. And from the very beginning, we worked a lot with local communities, with local contexts. So our residencies were devoted also to had the focus on the Dnipro and Dnipropetrovsk region, its heritage, to highlight important issues, to research ourselves, the identity, and so on. And when the full-scale invasion started, we looked at all our, like, experience, and we understood that we can't leave it. How could it be possible to leave the work that you've been involved in for like 10 years? A lot of, like, and you see how it influences the city, how it influences the public spaces, how it influences the education, professional artistic education in the city. So when you see the results of your work, it's impossible to leave it. And also the people from the team who decided to stay in Ukraine or to stay in Dnipro specifically, how can we, like, leave them? This is a very important reason. And of course, a big love to the country, to its values, to its heritage, to its culture. How can we leave it? Our families, our, like, close people there. So I think that the things we do with love, with responsibility, with a view into the future, this is the thing that make us stay and continue this work.
Well, in my case, Lviv is, well, geographically a bit privileged comparing to other cities. Of course, first weeks and months we didn't know or understood like what's been happening, and like first of all for me it was important to bring my daughter out. So this is what I did, but I realized that we've been like so many years working on the like creating contemporary art center in our city, and so many things were in my head. And I've been working 8 years before that. Like we've been adapting, like working on the concept, starting a number of projects, and I realized that I just cannot do that. I have to be there, and I didn't find so like a lot of my friends, colleagues also went to the military or were like in the conditions. So I just felt that I know how to do and what to do, and I have to do like 3 times more than because I cannot. I'm not going to the army to protect my country, and I felt like I still feel very strongly about that. Like there are 2 things: like do as much as possible in my sphere, in the sphere of art, to develop, to support, because the need is huge. And on another things, on the other hand, is also. Supporting with donations and with everything what we can, because we need donate and support to be defended, to be. So these 2 things, and motivation, of course, to do more, as we know why and what is needed.
You don't have to answer this, but do you sometimes feel guilty about not going to the army? Not joining?
Yes, sometimes I do feel guilty of being safe. Actually, this feeling was very much stronger at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and especially when you go to a funeral of someone dear, or to someone. Half your age younger, like just or someone dear to a friend, and that it's so unfair, and it's you feel very. I feel very strongly sometimes that I have to do something more.
Thank you. I'm going to the audience, but I also want you, while I'm walking there, to think if there's something that we haven't mentioned yet that we should definitely. Is there anyone who wants to ask a question? It's okay if not. Yeah, I have one over here and one over there. Kom naar u toe.
Hi, thank you. I had a question. If you could talk a little bit about this amazing network of collaboration that you have in the country, because I think that's one of the amazing assets that keeps you going, right? And I think it's, it's very beautiful. Could you please talk a little bit about that?
Mm-hmm. Who wants to answer? Yeah, I can start. Like, actually, we just started this conversation with Heide, and I was telling her the thing that I would like also to share with you. But many of you probably know it that we sometimes tell which generation we are. I'm generation 2004. This is like when you came to the streets to the protest, and in a way, this is when your journey started. Somebody's generation 2013, somebody's generation 2022. And so as Ukraine is this interesting combination of strategy and innovation, like I believe our strong point is to connect horizontally and to tackle challenges and crises when something is happening right now. I think this we have learned and this we can do. In 2022, like in my messenger, in my phone, the contacts arise, like people popped up who are popping up only once 7 years when something is happening, and I know I can rely on these people. And I think it's super important in dark times that you have these people everywhere, and that I also have these people, I don't know, in Amsterdam, in Kharkiv, in Lviv, and in many other cities. And so as I, probably you have heard that I'm not super optimistic person. I think like we are in dark times and darker times are coming, but we can come through these dark times while connecting with each other. And also in Europe, unfortunately, also probably darker times are coming, and this is something what can help. What I think, what we are probably not that strong yet in Ukraine, what you are stronger in, is how to transfer this activism and these relations and this possibility to react fastly and to do something fastly on institutional level. This is something what you can do better, and I think here we can learn from each other. We can learn you how to react in crises, and you can learn us how to live in calmer times.
Yeah, maybe just to add to what Alona said. Yeah, you're in answering our question. I believe that this is our superpower, the horizontal connections, and in starting from 2014, we had you might have heard that. A lot of social change started with the revolution. We call it Revolution of Dignity, and since then, a lot of the growth and the strengthening of civil society started. And when people really believed in their power and this power of connection and standing together and have a say. Citing Timothy Snyder, it's a famous American historian, he once said, all the evil starts from bad ideas, like simplifying that, and we who have different belief, we have to stand against that, and that's also our power, which we have to connect to, and this is what I believe, do.
I have another question over here.
I know at this moment it is very difficult to do that, but you are all looking back for what is stolen, what disappeared. Is there a central institution in your country which collects all those data?
Could you repeat the last sentence again?
Well, you're all looking what is stolen, what disappeared. Mm-hmm. Is there a central institution where all this information comes together?
I will start because I'm probably the most connected to the state. Yeah, so we have the Ministry of Culture, and like all of the national, regional museums are like part of the infrastructure of the Ministry of Culture. So they do the database of lootings, because again, it's important to say that the museums that are under occupation, not all of them managed to to evacuate their collections. And some of the artworks are looted by Russians, and we already know that they are, for example, on the expositions in Hermitage. And it's also needs to be documented, because we need these proofs, and it's complicated. There is also a database that Ukrainian Cultural Foundation did in terms of documenting the cultural losses, the architectural losses of the buildings. We at the Ukrainian Institute, because Ukrainian Institute is also a public institution, we present Ukraine internationally and are affiliated to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It was important for us as well to talk about what we lose when we lose cultural heritage of Ukraine, and we did a campaign where we tried to document, we document all the losses of cultural heritage, but then out of these we picked out some very prominent architectural or other examples, and we showing the picture of how this heritage site looked like before the full-scale invasion and how it looks now. And it's also, very visible to see the damage that is already done. So there is a database, and maybe colleagues know some other unofficial initiatives, because I'm sure that there are some as well.
Maybe one more question? Yeah, I'm coming towards you. Sorry, ik ga even naar die mevrouw toe. Oké, sorry. Sorry, ik moet hier zo klein mogelijk maken.
Just grab the microphone. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Uliana. I'm actually managing a project within ELIA. ELIA is a network, European network of art universities in Europe. And we have a Ukraine project called UAX that connects 15 Ukrainian art universities and academies with 15 non-Ukrainian, mainly EU art universities. We create partnerships between these Ukrainian universities and non-Ukrainian universities. We provide fellowships for Ukrainian art students, and we connect Ukrainian art universities to the ELIA network. And my question actually to you is, what do you think is perhaps missing, or what competencies we still need within preparation and training of young artists that are at the moment perhaps missing, or that could need to be developed for the artists of today?
You mean in Ukraine, yeah? Yeah. Thank you for your question, and a great initiative. Yeah, we've been talking so often during this trip about formal education in Ukraine, which is actually devastating and almost not preparing to anything, unfortunately. I will just share shortly that I'm currently working in a project which is analyzing current needs in the cultural community, in the artistic community, and we've been working for almost 5 months, like with in-depth interviews and with different models, like in order to see what is missing, like which support is right now needed for the artists and cultural institutions. And then we have done the rating of these questions. And question number 1 was, and when we share it with international partners, they are very surprised. Question number 1 was not modern and irrelevant education for artists in Ukraine. This is a problem number 1. That's why I'm a little bit lost when I asked which competencies are lacking, because there is like
all the competences.
A lot, unfortunately.
Actually, I'm teaching in the Dnipropetrovsk, like it's called Dnipropetrovsk, like former name of the city, Dnipro Art College, but I'm teaching for cultural managers, but they also have artists, actors, dancers, choreographers. The main problem, for example, on the basis of our college is pretty old school approaches in teaching. Mostly no young teachers with innovative approaches, contemporary media, so they don't mostly work with traditional art, for example, with painting or sculpture, works on paper. Last year, 2023, they established a new program for animation, but this is the most innovative program that they have. So we lack experts in contemporary art for all art, not all, but for mostly all art institutions. We have another program in Lviv. Actually, Nastya represents this academy here, so probably she could
it's time for me to wear my other fourth hat. I'm also a lecturer. I'm also a lecturer in Lviv Academy of Arts, and it's also like it's a department of contemporary artistic practices, and it's also actually an example of this grassroots initiative where a couple of my friends, curators and contemporary media digital artists, just understood that as you say, like the education is very traditional, very also post-Soviet in the structure of how the whole academy is organized, and they decided to go against the system and to kind of ruin it from the inside. So they established this department of contemporary artistic practices, and they managed to bring all the most visible people connected to the sphere of art in a very large sense of this word. And they did a brilliant curriculum to my idea. I teach to MA students, so they are operating for the 6th year, I think, already. The education that they are trying to bring is trying to adapt this existing system, which you cannot really oppose, but to bring the new methods and to bring these critical approaches to students. What is still lacking is probably, it's also from my perspective as a lecturer and as a person who is working with emerging artists as an independent curator as well, is I guess this understanding of emerging artists that the whole world is open for them. So I think it's relevant for a lot of young artists, but there are a lot of opportunities, and I'm also always motivating my students to apply for the residencies, to go see the world, to have the possibility to see the exhibitions, and in Ukraine it's also unfortunately English. So English is not that well spoken, unfortunately, even within young students. So my first lecture is like, go study English. If you don't know English, skip my class and take English class. And it's getting better, but it's also something very practical. Another thing is maybe also some practical things for the academies to document things, like they don't have scanners, they have collections as well. And it's, I don't know what happened to, for example, the collection of Kharkiv Academy of Arts, but I don't think that was the priority to work with and to evacuate. And unfortunately, that's also something that's not on the top list of activities, but I know that some initiatives are doing that. And also cross-sectorality. So in Lviv, for example, like the Academy of Art, the Music Academy, the Ukrainian Catholic University, which has the culturology department, are trying to bring students together so that emerging curators, emerging artists, and emerging sound artists could kind of have this possibility to know each other before they graduate, and it's also working good. So there are some also very grassroots, very personal initiatives of my friends and myself that are working towards it.
What we also do in Dnipro, for example, when we have in our program in the Art Suite Gallery or Dnipro Center for Contemporary Culture, experts, curators from different cities of Ukraine or from abroad, we are also trying to invite them and deepen into the formal process of education in the college, because the director of the college is pretty open to new suggestions. So we are trying also to involve those experts to this formal part of the education, but it's like just spots, it's not a system. So the thing that we are working on is to gather more experts. But as in today's reality, as Dnipro is really very close to the front line, it's not that much possible to bring a lot of people there. But online education also helps, because some lecturers can join. But still, the system is really old school. So
maybe I would could add just two short things, because there was part of the question, what's needed, right? I think like ecosystem, very often students, they do not know what would be next, right? Why to study there, why to take courses when I believe institutions which we are leading and organizing are the wonderful showcases where artists can now finally come and observe what are the contemporary practices, because like curators then been studying abroad in different countries, or artists that also became famous in different countries and returned. And so we try to showcase the best practices and work with research-based exhibitions. So now they come and they learn and see like how it should work. Also from each of our organizations, we work with informal education in one or another way, and it's also super helpful. And any kinds of informal international or Ukraine-based support would also be helpful. That was also like what we can do, and like support how and why it matters, how it can work. We try to do that, and I believe for students it's super important that it's not for vain. And a third point was this example of Lviv Art Academy, when a young generation of alumni, so who graduated from Art Academy, they've been in various countries, they returned, and they started this small revolution within Academy. Of course, the rector of Academy allowed them to do that, but they started this contemporary practices faculty, so where they try to really do as much as possible for students to grow, and then they know like that they can what they can do in organizations as ours. They come and become mediators. They can be curators or artists presented. So, and it works a lot and it helps. I believe a lot. Yeah.
Thank you all, and also to Natalia. We're gonna do it at the bar because I'm looking at the time and I'm already running very late. I'm sorry, but if you're staying for a drink, I hope. So then maybe that's a good opportunity. I'm sorry. Thank you all very, very much for being here, and also thank you to Natalia and for DutchCulture for working together. This Monday we have a screening of a film about the Tatars of Crimea. And the deportation of them in 1944. So if you're free on the Monday, I think it's going to be very impressive. If not Monday, I hope to see you again very soon, and thank you very much for being here. Goodbye.
Thank you.